those are some of the statistics we say with a lot of conviction. And I'm just like honest enough to be like, I don't know what we're convicted about. I've never understood what the statistic means. Economics is solely beholden to market sentiment. So what everybody thinks is true is going to be true. When everybody thinks the market's bad, guess what? They don't want to spend any money, and that makes the market bad. The Great Depression lasted for so long because market sentiment was that we are in a deep depression. And when we are feeling like we are in a deep depression, I am not likely to go and try to start a new business venture or to spend a whole bunch of money. And when nobody's doing those things, it doesn't inject liquidity into the marketplace and the economy has trouble recovering. And so these things tend to happen. That's what I mean when I say they tend to happen slowly than quickly. They start actually happening slowly and then things change really, really quickly.
2026 it's not a rebound year. It's a redistribution year. Right? So we're not rebounding. It's just a redistribution. The good news is, look, less agents they're leaving.
It's a great way to put it.
Look, it's a bigger and better opportunity for you.
DFW, turn it up. This week in DFW Real Estate. The weekly podcast built for agents who actually get paid. Market moves, listing heat, closing streets. DFW agents. Let's eat.
All right. Welcome back to episode 4.
It's flying by.
Going so fast every week. Last week, if you listened to last week's show, we went over short sales. And funny thing is I got a text this morning from Logan Walter.
Yeah.
Good friend of ours. And by the way, Logan's business, he's crushing it.
Yeah.
I'll share some text with you, what he was kind of sharing with me about his sentiment on the market right now. But
Okay.
he had sent me a text asking about if I could help him or refer him to somebody that would help kind of guide him through. He's got his first short sale listing. And then Jesse posted in the group like 10 minutes later, he dropped episode 3, which was going over the short sales.
I had 2 coaching calls earlier today. 2 for 2 agents are dealing with short sale situations.
Yeah. Now I do want to go back, and obviously it's a hot topic. And today's show, we're going to go over kind of the language of real estate, what's happening. There's 3 cycles, 3 phases that are going on and where we're at currently. And we'll break down some numbers. But I do, just like I was telling Logan when we were having our text conversation today, I was letting him know this. While we should be skilled up on it, and we are putting together a great training class on it. It just takes some time. We have to update everything because, again, this is starting to come back. But a lot of the old training guides and people that were doing it may no longer be in the business, or it's not relevant to today's modern, everything going on. So just be on the lookout for that. Also, if you are first time listening to this, or you've never seen Brian and I talk about or been on our show, go over to our Facebook group, DFW Realtors. You can continue the conversation there, share, collaborate, and network. But I was telling Logan, I was like, look, you should skill up on it just to be able to have conversations with sellers that are going through this. This is a tough time. It's stressful for them.
Yeah.
And you can be the voice of reason. You can help calm them down, but it is going to be still very small percentage of an agent's business.
Correct.
Right? I mean, it's not everyone is hurting financially. Not everyone is falling behind on their payments and not have enough equity in their house to have to go through the short sale.
These types of things. Sorry, Jesse, just like for a second, my friend.
Yeah.
These types of things are indications of broader economic pieces of the landscape. So you may never run into a short sale situation. We went over some of the numbers last week, and still a small percentage of deals that are probably going to be short sales. The reason that I think that we talk about those things so much is, one, it's a very unique thing that's happening in the marketplace right now that hasn't been happening for a long time. And now that it is, which we kind of talked about last week, that's kind of what we call a leading indicator for where the market might be heading a little bit. What's important about the short sale situation, whether or not you're ever going to complete one or it's ever going to be an aspect of your business, is that as an agent, what is incredibly important right now is that you're becoming more adept at having powerful conversations with your clients. Because if we're starting to see more short sale situations, while you may never do a short sale, what I can guarantee you will be, what will happen in your business if you are a productive agent is you're going to be having some conversations with people who have a different mindset around how they want to price their home than what the market is going to give them right now.
Yes.
The amount of short sales coming into the market is an indication that prices are coming down from where they once were. And so if there's anything you take away from this, if you're just like, I'm not doing short sales, I never come across it. Right. Okay. I understand that. Also, are you prepared to have fierce conversations with your seller clients around pricing homes accurately? Because if not, you're going to have some headwinds in getting some listings sold.
Sure. Absolutely. And by the way, this is, if first time listening, or if you're returning listening, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button. And go ahead, please, Brian, please, and like our sponsors, right?
Yes.
Go support our sponsors. We have great sponsors of this show. Homeward Property Management, one of the best property management companies here in Dallas-Fort Worth. All you need to do is get with Dana and Duncan over at homewarddfw.com, and they'll take great care of your clients. If you've got maybe you don't want to handle a lease listing. I know a lot of agents that are struggling with that. They don't know how to vet great tenants and really advise their client on finding the best quality tenant.
There's a lot of laws out there.
There's a ton of them, and also from the management side, it's always best, especially if you have an accidental landlord, get with a management company. I know they take a monthly fee. It will be better for them to have a professional manager than to try to self-manage or try to use ChatGPT to figure out how to manage it, on their own.
Exactly.
And then look, ProCare. Look, if you need a home remodeling, if you need a handyman service company, maybe you've got a client that's under contract and doing inspections and some repairs have popped up. Get with ProCare Home Solutions, ProCareDFW.com. Get with Chris and his team. They do great work. They do everything from roofing, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all the way down to the little knick-knack handyman items. And then last but not least, if you want a podcast just like this, I was listening to a webinar about, you need to capture the attention of audiences, and the best way to do that is through podcasts.
Yep.
And to build that authority and credibility, get with Jesse over at Tor Studios, torstudios.com. He'll make you look and sound great. And just like my wife says, if you look good, you feel good.
100%. We get to do it every single week. I feel great.
Yes. But if we go back to kind of what everything's facing, this, it's easy to scream the sky is falling. It's easy to think that, the real estate market is just in shambles. But when we really look at, there's really every housing cycle has three phases, right? And if we break it down, that the modern housing cycle from the 70s had the S&L crisis, right? The savings and loan crisis that started to have that real estate contraction in there. 2008, we had the financial global collapse.
Yep.
And then that moves through, the same three phases. And phase one, what ends up typically happening is you have to have this growth, right? You've got to have this expansion that's happening. And typically when that does happen, depending on whether the 70s, 80s, 90s, that when we kind of see this market cycle happening, that expansion typically means there's a lot easier credit. Right? It's easier to get credit. It's cheaper borrowing. And then because of that, it increases rising demand. There's
several terms around this, if you've ever heard them. Irrational exuberance is one, groupthink is another. Essentially, when everybody starts doing something, everyone starts to do something. And so the idea of the expanding part of the business cycle is, this was kind of, I would say, artificially started in a way when we went into the COVID years and we dropped rates really, really quickly, but that made money cheaper. It was cheaper to borrow, easy credit. And so everybody started, or I say the first initial wave of people started to buy a house. When that happens, then the rest of the market reacts and the public goes, everyone's buying a house. I should buy a house now before it's too late. And then the lending side will go, I want to capitalize on all of the available market share out there. I need to be competitive in order to do that. So how can I make better mortgage products to make money even cheaper? How can I cut my commission down a little bit possibly? How can I just get the most loans done that I can possibly do? And then you'll end up with even an easier pathway to borrowing, which when you have an easy pathway to borrowing and everyone around you is doing something, you're going to want to do something as well. So it becomes this self-fulfilling cycle. And then as that momentum carries us forward, then usually you get into what becomes an irrationally exuberant phase of the cycle, which eventually will lead to the second phase of the cycle, which is contraction. But this irrationally exuberant part of the cycle, in my opinion, is when we started to see sales prices creep up to a point where people were no longer paying anywhere close to advertised market pricing. They were coming out of pocket and continuing to push prices up. A little bit of a history and future lesson. As you experience these types of things, you'll start to recognize where we're at in the business cycle, and usually you'd only recognize it in hindsight. So this is a great opportunity to learn for the future. When you start to see people doing things that they otherwise wouldn't do in any market environment, like pay an extra $100,000 in cash for a home that wasn't worth $100,000 more 6 months ago, you may start to feel like this is the irrationally exuberant phase of the cycle.
Well, and look, when that does happen, and for us as real estate professionals and agents, what does this mean? We saw the floodgates open of people getting in and getting their license. We saw a lot more real estate agents joining the business. We saw a lot more loan officers getting into the business because, it was easy money.
Making money.
Yeah. And to go back to your point of like, hey, when you start to look around and you can start to notice these trends happening and all right, here, this is where we are whether we're in the beginning, the middle, or the tail end of the cycle, is that you still have to get while the getting's good.
Yeah.
Right? Just because we're in phase one, the expansion phase, and you're like, oh, this is bad. Right. I know that what ends up happening and what we're doing right now is we're stealing. We can use the term borrow. Sure. We're borrowing to, we're taking to, future sales today.
Right.
And we're just kicking the can down the road of something bad that's going to happen.
Yeah. We're taking tomorrow's successes and we're taking today and tomorrow's successes all right now, which means tomorrow there's not going to be as much success available.
But when you, even though that you might logically know that's happening, you can't stop it.
We're still showing up for work.
Yeah.
And I didn't stop working back then.
Yeah. You can't stop it. But what you can start doing, and Brian and I, the little side note, Brian and I had the opportunity and privilege to speak in front of 120, 130 agents yesterday at a wealth building event that Brittany Stewart and Nicole Russo put on. They did an amazing job.
Really, really great job.
By the way, if you've not been to the Metrotex building in Irving, freaking amazing.
Yeah, they do events there regularly. So those two throw an awesome event. And I'm sure they put all sorts of marketing out for the next one they're doing. Like, make sure you jump on that because it was awesome.
And one of the things that when Brian and I we got the opportunity to close out the event, that was kind of cool. Was that we kind of looked and we asked the room if everyone lost their income today, their real estate income today, how many people would be in for a world of financial hurt?
Yeah,
and quite a bit of them shook their head yes. Few of them actually raised their hand and it's like, yeah, it would be painful. They didn't have enough money saved up, or they didn't have enough money coming in from their investments or residual income. And I only bring that up because when we're in this phase one of expansion and we're going to get when the getting's good, we also need to start putting some money away. We also need to probably start investing so that when we know we start getting into phase two and then phase three, that we can weather out the storm.
So I believe that we're kind of fully into phase three right now. And so we want to talk about these next two phases, but in order to just make this actionable, like we always try to do, these cycles are as predictable as the sun rising. They're going to happen. The sun rising and sun setting, it's predictable. These three phases of the business cycle are predictable. So we will be in a phase one scenario again, relatively soon, most likely for whatever reasons. If there's one actionable thing I hope you took away from the last market cycle, take all of the success that you find when you're in an expanding market and be responsible with it, because it will carry you to a life of wealth and freedom. Show up and work your butt off. Don't get accustomed to living the lifestyle that you could possibly afford if it was phase one all the time, because it won't always be phase one. And I think that's a decision that a lot of agents unfortunately made, is just thinking that phase one was going to last forever.
Well, and then, again, we take out loans, or our monthly expenses get too high, because we always think that our income is going to stay the same or go up. Because when you ask people, and the car industry does this, right? You're going to buy a car, you finance it out for 5, 6, 7 years. And, the car salesman says, Brian, don't you think you're going to be making more money next year or the next couple of years? You're like, well, yeah, I am.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Very few people actually say no.
Right.
And then what ends up happening is prices start getting, too high. We start to see, a shortage of inventory happening. And, then we have to fix the problem. And by the time we start fixing the problem, we're usually too far into the phase one. And, then we have to get into phase two, which is compression.
Yep.
And that's when we start to overcorrect.
And usually the compression cycle starts slowly and then quickly. Things start to slow down a little bit, and you start to sense it just at the fringes, just at the and you want to ever just, I mean, if you could go back and look at, there's a lot of really great real estate Facebook groups and things like that. Obviously, DFW Realtors, if you haven't joined that, but there are many out there on the internet, and there's always, this is how the transition from phase one to phase two tends to look in the hyper connected age that we're in. If you remember, maybe 3 years ago, we were really transitioning from phase one to phase two. Interest rates had climbed quite a bit, and the last of the liquidity was really running out in the marketplace, and you would see these Facebook comment threads for these posts in these groups, like, is anybody feeling like, they're not getting any offers, or on houses they used to sell really quickly and things like that. And then you'd have the loudest voice in the room be like, not in my market, it's to the moon every day, right? It's like, okay, we're starting to see the transition to phase two, because these things don't happen everywhere all at once, right? But you'll start to get a sense of like, okay, the market is changing in some areas. And then you get flat out denial from other people that like, it's never going to change. We're going to be in phase one forever. So it's just always an interesting, it's interesting to watch those conversations unfold in real time, but that's generally when you'll start to get the sense of change is happening. And then normally, looking back in hindsight, you'll see that things happened very slowly and then very, very quickly, because again, with the irrational exuberance, once the general public and the market sentiment changes, it changes for everyone, right? And that's the truth of economics, is that economics is solely beholden to market sentiment. So what everybody thinks is true is going to be true. That's why it's so difficult sometimes to recover from things like a great financial crisis or a deep recession, not because we couldn't pull ourselves out of recession, like we don't have the capital to do it. It's because when everybody thinks the market's bad, guess what? They don't want to spend any money. And that makes the market bad. It's the same thing. And this is why this is one of the many things that we attempted to try and pull ourselves out of with the Great Depression. The Great Depression lasted for so long because market sentiment was that we are in a deep depression. And when we are feeling like we are in a deep depression, I am not likely to go and try to start a new business venture or to spend a whole bunch of money. And when nobody's doing those things, it doesn't inject liquidity into the marketplace, and the economy has trouble recovering. And so these things tend to happen. That's what I mean when I say they tend to happen slowly than quickly. They start actually happening slowly, meaning the liquidity starts to run out, rates go up, the sales prices get to a peaking point where people are no longer willing to pay more and more and more. And then the second part of the transition is now people actually start to feel and think that things are changing. And then once the market thinks that things are changing, they actually do change. That's where the market sentiment comes into play. And then things change really, really quickly.
There's a lot there. And let's go back to, all right, we start to enter that phase two. and which is in our market that is 20, right now that was the start of 2023. If we really go back and look at it, right? We started to see what? We started to see rates rise, and rates rising was kind of, when we look at it, we're blaming inflation. The blame is everything got more expensive, but it's also we're trying to tighten up. Home affordability has gotten out of hand. Right. And the banks start tightening up on liquidity. Right. It's you start to see this. Bank of America used to do this a lot. Like I remember clients saying they would get this really low rate, and the more people that went through the Bank of America loan process, then all of a sudden they would start to tighten up, and they weren't getting the same rates or anything else like that. I don't know how legally they can do that, but it's the same thing. As we start to see, all right, that liquidity starts to tighten up, affordability really starts to break down, and transactions fall. I mean, we went from about what was the height? Was it
6.5,
6.1, 6.5, somewhere like that?
It was, close to 6.5 million transaction sides traded in 2022 was the peak, I believe.
And then we fell from that over 6 million transactional sides to
4.03.
Yes, 4.03. And that's about a 35% drop when we see that. And if we really think about it, what didn't change, right? If we look at this as a whole, demand cooled off and stopped because of interest rates, because of affordability. Household formation didn't stop.
Yeah, people didn't stop having kids. People didn't stop being born. The population didn't stop growing. Their capacity to afford a home was the only thing that changed.
Right. And so when we start to look at this, because again, as agents and real estate professionals, what do? We get in our own heads about this. And when the market's bad, we're like, whoa, everything's bad. There's no way we can make money at this. And when we start to look at, all right, if we go with the problem-solving techniques of money changes hands when problems are solved, and we say, all right, we know that the homeownership demand didn't disappear. It's just kind of temporarily on the sideline.
Right.
People still have stuff going on. They're still having kids. They're still getting married. They're still getting divorced. Right. They're still getting, they're downsizing, or, they're dying. Yeah. Things still have to happen.
I don't subscribe to the idea that the younger generations don't want to purchase real estate. I think it's become more difficult for them. And the reason that I think that that's an important note to make is that I actually don't think homeownership demand, anecdotally at least, I don't think that it's ever changed in America. I think there's something very human about wanting to own the place where you live. I don't think that's changed. I mean, heck, I was probably one of the biggest outliers for the longest time because I really enjoyed living in small spaces and not having to worry about a whole bunch. But I bought a lot of real estate in that time. I just didn't buy my own single family homestead. But I think on a national level, the desire that people have to own a home, I don't think has changed. And I don't know that it ever really will. The thing that changes is their ability to do that and still maintain the lifestyle that they want to maintain while affording the home that they want to purchase. And so these cycles happen really, really, really simply. Phase one starts with, I want a home, I can afford one, and everybody starts to think that it's a good time to buy. When it's, I want a home, I can't afford one, and everybody else wants one as well, now you're in an expanding cycle. It's good to be in the home selling business because everyone wants to be in the home buying business. When you have a significant event that lowers interest rates, that's just gravy on top. We would have been in an expanding cycle in 2020, regardless of whether COVID or not happened. It was just that point in the cycle. But now it was, I want a home, I can't afford it, everybody else wants one, and I have cheap money, which that just accelerates the expansion. And so that's where you get into phase one. And then phase one will start to pucker out at some point because it's, I want a home. Everyone around me wants a home. But even at these interest rates, I can't really afford one because I don't have the savings in the bank to go $100,000 over asking price. And so more and more people will start to fall into that category. And that's when it happens slowly and then quickly. Slowly, fewer people can afford the thing that they want. And then, because fewer people can afford the thing that they want, now slowly the market sentiment will change to, I want a home. Fewer people around me want homes because they're really expensive. And it doesn't even matter if I want one because I can't afford it anyway. And so now you're swiftly into phase 2, which is homes are too expensive. And now nobody wants to buy a home. This is an extreme example, but now home buying is bad. But you notice there, the desire to own a home isn't what changed. It's, can I afford to have the home that I want and still live the lifestyle that I want? I would still love to own a home. I just can't afford it under these circumstances. And now market sentiment is such that, oh, the market sucks. It's a bad time to buy a home, so on and so forth. Well, if the market feels like it's a bad time to buy a home, then the asset that you own, people are going to be willing to pay less for that. And you're going to have to come down in price in order to make that sale happen. So now what happens? Prices fall a little bit. This all happens outside of interest rates. Interest rates are a temporary thing. So now it is, I want a home. I can't really afford one. But if you sell me one for cheaper than you're listing it for right now, I'll buy it. And if you're motivated enough to move, you'll sell it to me for cheaper. And so now slowly things start to change in the other direction. Slowly sellers start to go, I own a home. I want to move on to the next chapter of my life. I'm willing to sell it for a little bit less. And everyone around me is willing to sell it for a little bit less too. So I have to be willing to sell for a little bit less. And then slowly and then quickly we move into phase 3, which is I want a home. I'm starting to be able to afford it again. Not everyone around me realizes it yet. And so I think it's a good time to buy a home. And that's where you get consolidation. That's where you start to get seller supply and buyer demand coming back in sync. This is the part of the cycle that we're now entering is I want a home. I'll pay a fair price for it. And if you're willing to sell yours at a fair price, I will now buy it. That's distinctly into phase 3, which is where I believe we're at in the cycle now.
Well, let me ask you this, Brian, because Keller Williams their agents just came back from their convention, family reunion. And one of the slides during their kind of their vision speech that shares data, it goes over the housing reports, and one of their slides talked about wealth and income, and I'll pull it up here. So it talks about the baby boomer generation, Gen X, and millennials. And we talk about, all right, homes aren't affordable anymore. And they always go back and reference like their parents or, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and how today's generation is not making money. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with, number one is they don't understand the concept of money and just the value. So these stats here goes over baby boomers, their average total assets by the age of 30. Okay. Right. So this is at age 30, their balance sheet by generation. Baby boomers had an average total assets of $147,561. Okay. Now their average total debt was $53,583. Okay. Their average mortgage debt at that time was $40,387. And their average net worth was $93,978 with a median net worth of $24,900. Okay. Right. Then we get into Gen X. Their average total assets by the age of 30 is $214,743. So we're seeing an increase in total assets, right? Well, it's compared to the baby boomers at the $147,500. Now their average debt is doubled at $100,394. Their average mortgage debt is up $34,000 to $74,758. And their average net worth is $114,349. Yeah. With a median net worth of $31,472. Now we go back again. Baby boomers at a median net worth of $24,900 at the age of 30. Gen X is at an average median net worth of $31,472. So that's a plus 7,000 basically. 7,000. And millennials, their average total assets $219,766 and some change. Average total debt $114,957. So you can see that each generation is getting more and more higher debt leverage. Their average mortgage debt is $76,256. with an average net worth of $104,810 and a median net worth of $36,642. So if we look at, all right, wealth and income, each generation is actually generating more wealth and income than the previous generation. The problem that we're seeing is that we're the younger generation is taking on more debt to get there. And so when things go bad for them, because everyone faces a storm in their lifetime or storms, that they don't have enough maybe financial backing to weather that storm.
So this is a good point that you just made, and I want people to key in on this. What's less important is your total net worth, and what's more important is the spread between your assets and liabilities as a total percentage of your assets and liabilities, right? So if you think that basically we're taking the difference between 24 in total net worth and 36 in total net worth, 3 generations removed. So baby boomers to millennials, is that or is it Gen? Is it which generation was the last one you mentioned?
It was baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. So the 2 generations removed, you have goes from $24,000 in median net worth to $36,000 in median net worth. But that spread, basically the spread between assets and liabilities, being 36,000 for millennials, that's a smaller spread as a total percentage of their assets, meaning what's 36,000 divided by, was it 214,000 in assets you said? 219.
219? Can you help me with this, Jesse? I know this is just math, but I think this is actually important. What's 36 divided by 219? 16.5%, 16.4%. And then what is 24,000 divided by what was the original assets for the boomers?
It was their total assets of 147,561 and a 24,900 median net worth.
Okay. So, wow. So this is really important. 16.2%. So almost the exact same percentage, right? But at a much higher level of assets, if you have kind of that same spread, then if your home, for example, becomes worth 12% less over 3 years, you can understand how that can put you in a massive bind, right? So having that type of spread when your net worth is essentially lower and you're not taking on as much debt, then you don't have as much. If the value of your asset goes down, it's a smaller spread. That's an interesting way of thinking. That's an interesting way of thinking of things. That really the assets and liabilities spread has not really changed a whole lot in 2 generations. Housing prices have gone up. Wages have not gone up as much as housing prices, which means that we have to be taking on more debt or buying more things.
So it's buying more things. Obviously, we've got, I would like to look at the percentage of increase in student loan debt from baby boomers to Gen X to millennials.
I'm just like thinking out loud because I'd never seen that slide before. So like if you watch this podcast and then think like Brian just said something that wasn't totally true, I'm thinking out loud right now and trying to find the signal from the noise here. How do you have the exact same percentage of assets to liabilities, but you're less well off financially? It's because you've probably taken on more debt than previous generations. And if you have more debt, then you're a little bit more fragile. It's honestly a little interesting that percentage is so close though, because I would have thought that we have a much higher percentage of debt to assets. What I would be curious about on that slide is that all millennials or only homeowners?
But it's saying it's all. I mean, they're using the comparison that I know. I mean, I could be wrong, but they're saying everyone by the age of 30.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what else has changed between the baby boomer generation and millennials? Well, we have way easier access to more things. We can spend. That's the thing. We have the capacity to spend more money than previous generations, and I think that's one of the things that is. It makes financial education and wealth building so much more important in younger generations. It's way easier to not build wealth than it was in previous generations. There was only a few things you really had the ability to spend money on as a baby boomer. If you're 30 years old as a baby boomer, you've got access to obviously to, restaurants and stores and things like that. But like, I can't just buy every little thing that I want off of Amazon whenever I want.
And here's so I just, doing some quick research on it. So, again, baby boomers. So if we look at it in general, like if we go to the student loan section, if we go to more student loans, only about 3% of baby boomers by the time they were 30 carried any type of student loan debt. Right now, Gen X and millennials, Gen X, that number jumped to about 8% of millennials by the time they're age of 30 still carrying, student loan debt. And then it jumped up to millennials. It's now about roughly about 12% of the population of millennials is still paying off on student loans. And so, if we look at it, in 2007, the average student loan balance was about $18,000. Today, it's roughly about $38,000. So it's more than doubled on that. And when we look at it, here's an interesting thing is this stat here, and I'd have to fact check it, so I'm going to put it out there, and then someone can tell me if I'm completely wrong. Every $1,000 in student loan debt that's being reduced, it increases someone's likelihood of home ownership by nearly 2%.
I would believe that.
So we can see that. Number one, the correlation of student loan debt to home ownership, for the younger generation is greatly impacts that. So for future generations, if we want to make a positive impact on home ownership, then we got to figure out how to reduce the student loan debt.
I'm glad that you went and took that direction, because where my mind goes when I see statistics like this is I just go down rabbit holes on how do we cut through some of the noisiness here and kind of see what are the real levers that have been pulled in between these generations to make affordability different and lifestyle changes and things like that, right? Like there's an obvious anecdotal thing that we talk about a lot, that home affordability has gotten out of hand. And I think one of the things that we miss is that home sizes have gotten out of hand as well, right? Like can you just, I know I'm asking you for a lot on this because we've been throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you today, Jesse, but like average home size in America in 1960, like just, I'm sure you'll come up with something,
well,
right?
If you do, I do recall seeing this is that
you can do by year. That's even better.
Yeah. We saw that increase to the McMansions. Right. So like 1970, the average median new single family home size was 1,500 square feet.
It's literally increased by 50% since the 70s. Homes are 50% larger.
But it's going back down.
And now, and that's funny, it's peaked and it's coming back down. It's because on average, people are having fewer kids.
Less kids, but it's also cheaper to build. 100%. Right. So we're trying to make more affordability. And Jesse, go back to the student loan debt. The stat here that just is eye-opening to me is that, again, for every, I'll reiterate it, every $1,000 reduction in student loan debt is associated with an increase of home ownership rate of approximately 1.5 to 2% points for young adults. Now, we saw the overall contribution of declining. Increasing student loan debt is estimated to account for approximately 20% of the total decline in home ownership in young adults. This is adults between the ages of 24 to 32. Yeah. That was observed between 2005 and 2014. So we saw approximately about 20% reduction in that age group being able to go and buy a home because of this student loan debt. So the reason being is that it impacts the debt to income ratio. It also impacts, the ability to save for down payment. Yeah. Because obviously from after 2007, after the crash and the 2007, 2008, we couldn't do the ninja loans, no income, no job, no assets, no down payment. Right. And then we got into the FHA 3.5% down payment, and now we're seeing, I think, average down payment somewhere, I think 5 to 10%.
Yeah, which is and that didn't even come around. That would be another interesting statistic, was like average down payment percentage back in the baby boomers era. Well, the picture that I think we're trying to paint here is that we tend to focus on housing affordability when we look at the difference in generations, and we don't look at overall cultural and economic differences, right? We are buying homes that are 50% larger than they were in the baby boomer generation. We are also financing educations at a much higher clip than we were. We are adding accessories to our lives, like our computers, smartphones, everything that racks up credit card debt and things like that. This will be a really interesting one, Jesse, and I think this will paint a picture of exactly what I'm talking about. Can you just Google the terms like average income to car price by year or something like that, right? Like the picture that I'm trying to paint, and this will continue to go up, I'm sure, right? U.S. and how has that kind of changed over time? My thesis would be that we spend more on cars as a percentage of our overall income than we did back in the baby boomer generation as well. The reason that I bring all these things up is because I think it's important to explore what else goes into affordability at a baseline level rather than just housing, because housing affordability is just lifestyle affordability. Can we afford to live the lives that we want to live in the place that we live in, whether or not we own it, is going to be one factor of our overall lifestyle. And so how do we then, in the new era, the modern era, how do we get housing affordability back under control? Building is one, bringing student loan debt down is another, creating more affordable areas of our lifestyles in general. All of that will spur homeownership forward again. We have to get there. I think that we're having really important conversations right now around the higher education space and whether or not it is worth it to take on an enormous amount of debt in order to further my education. My thesis is that we are entering phase 2 of the higher education cycle, in my opinion. Like, I really think it's going to happen slowly then quickly.
Well, yeah, phase 2. It's funny. I want to pull up a text I just got from a good friend of mine. He's like, I know you think about this way too much. And it says, AI is accelerating so fast that going to school might not be worth it anymore.
Slowly and then quickly.
Right. One of my kids is 16 years old and he drives himself to school. And one day he slept in and I was so astonished. I was like, how is that even possible? If I would have done that as a kid, then I thought my parents would have, then the thought of what my parents would have done to me, would have scared the crap out of me. But now they're talking about is that, with you're right. We're probably close to figuring, with AI and the expansion of that, it's going to have an impact on school. It's going to have an impact on all of it. We can get into we don't even need to get into a scary part of where this goes. But, the consolidation within that is, do we see less people taking on student loan debt and finding ways to make money, whether that is part of universal income that may come out, part gig economy. And now they don't have as much debt that they were saddling, and now they're going back into, all right, we're going to go buy a house. We need to have a home base. Yeah. We're working from home because we're working maybe multiple jobs or whatever that may be. And, I do think you're right. We are in phase 3 of the consolidation market on the real estate side, which is inventory starts building up, your prices start stabilizing. From the agent side, the weak operators are exiting. We're seeing a large large exit on non-renewals of licenses. And then from the real estate sector is that your professionals start to gain market share. The ones that are building scalable, legitimate businesses start to see an increase in their market share.
I have no problem talking anecdotally on this show. And for as long as you listen to me and Nick on this show, or any guests we ever have on, or anytime Jesse is kind enough to chime in, just know that we don't care if we're wrong sometimes. We're having fun here. And I'm probably going to say stuff that if you fact check me on, there might be 10% of it that I got a little bit off. I speak from lived experience as much as I try to get the numbers right, but I'm always honest about that. And so where I think that we're at right now with the market, we can look at all the stats, we can look at all these things. One of the reasons that I think that we are firmly into a phase 3 right now is because we run an organization that serves high producing real estate agents on the transaction management side. And they're busier than ever, and we're busier than ever. It's expanding like crazy because they're starting to get really busy, but we don't serve. Our business is not designed to serve agents who are only selling 5 homes a year.
Right. Not the one-offs.
Right. We serve the professional agent, and they need us more than ever. That's an anecdotal piece. But when I see things like that, that feels like a leading indicator that we're going into consolidation.
And look, the good news is, as you're hearing this, again, this is not designed to scare anybody. It's designed to, let's look at this logically from a phase 1, 2, and 3. If we truly are right now in phase 3, and we believe that we are, the best thing is this historically, this is where it's the best time to make money. Yeah. Right. Because again, you're starting to see that there's less competition. right? There's maybe even less competition. While there's still maybe a higher number of licensed agents, a lot of those licensed agents may be not wanting to get more business because they think the market's so bad and they don't want to bang their head against the wall, or maybe that they're afraid that they're giving their clients wrong advice, whatever that may be. And so for you as the skilled up professional who is plugging in, going to the meetups, going to trainings, listening to the NAR stats, Place, the company that I'm a part of, Place, that the Good Home Team's associated with, just had Dr. Lawrence Yun on, the chief economist for NAR, and they are saying, like, look, we are starting to see us pull a rebound.
Yep.
We're going to see demand is going to slowly start to increase, which is great news. And that's great news for people that are building their business, that is building their pipeline, that is continuing to follow up, that is educating. People don't want to be sold, they want to be educated.
Exactly.
And then it's your job to guide them to the best solution for them.
100%. And I feel like that's exactly where we're at right now. Jesse, you had pulled something up before that piqued my interest, and it was something around affordability, but I have this thought stuck in my head of where we go from here. So today they're 1,000 feet larger than 1973. What is your guys' opinion on? We always talk about home affordability is difficult because we don't have enough units. We haven't built enough, and I think that's true to an extent. I think there's an extreme version of that where you overbuild and then demand dies down. But if we are going to be using AI and so much technology in the future, do you feel like people tend to gravitate away from like massive city centers and things like that, and we start to build more and expand geographically, and that brings affordability back into play?
I mean, hasn't that always been the play, though? I mean, if you think about it, think of it this way, right?
Yeah.
This, city of Dallas, everything has expanded out from that because people were either trying to get away from the noise, whatever it is. They got more land. Or
that's what affordability was.
And the land's cheaper. If you go here in Collin County, Plano got hot. It built up really, really fast. And then so what did people do? They got into Allen. They went into McKinney. They went into Frisco. And then from there, that started to build up. But then you go further north, Van Alstyne. You got Melissa. You got Anna, Princeton. So if you really look at that, we've always been doing that. Now, the sacrifice back then was, are you willing to go out and be a homeowner and find a more affordable home out in this part of town? But the sacrifice is that you're going to have to drive, your commute time to work is going to be X.
Yeah, there are thresholds for everything. There's a pricing threshold that I won't pay above. There's a geographic threshold that I won't live this far out, right? And so that's been the general way that we expand, is kind of slowly over time we expand geographically. I wonder if that will accelerate, but I'm usually pretty honest with you about why and when. I don't try to sound smarter than I am, and I've never understood this statistic, so maybe I'm just dumb and I'm totally missing something, but like, this one that you pull up right here, Jesse, it says, this is the Center for American Progress is cited in here. The U.S. faces a chronic housing shortage with estimates of the deficit ranging from 1.5 million to over 5.5 million. By the way, really big range. That just sounds like smart people trying to sound smart, because that's like so big. I know whenever you get into the millions, it just seems like millions is millions, but the difference between 1.5 million and 5.5 million is very big. That's a substantial range. With experts suggesting 2 million to 20 million new units are needed to resolve the crisis. It could be this. It could be 10 times this. Like, why would you even have an opinion if your range is so big? I don't know what that means, and I've never claimed to know. When we say, let's just say it's 5.5 million. When you say that we have a shortage of 5.5 million homes, what does that mean? Does that mean we have 5.5 million homeless families in America? Or does that mean we have 5.5 million people that have the capacity to purchase, but there's not an available home for them? Meaning they are currently renting, but they make enough income to purchase a home, and there's not a home for them to purchase. Do you see what I'm saying there? Like, I've never understood what that statistics means, because I thought in 2025 or at the end of 2024, I was under the assumption that the median income to median home price, that the median home price in America was like 26% short of what the median income needed to be.
Look, here's what
maybe
it
not
is.
26%, but it was lower than it needed to be.
So
right?
the technical definition, right, is a housing shortage exists when household formation is growing faster than the housing supply, which is new homes plus resale inventory.
Gotcha.
So in simple terms, more people are moving into DFW than homes are being built or listed.
That
so
makes
that's
sense.
the reason why they call it, or they're future casting this shortage that is happening, because it is household formation. It's not, it's not that there's not enough homes for sale. There's not enough homes for sale to meet the future needs and to meet the needs of the people who want or need to live in it.
Okay, so it is technically a little bit like my first idea that like there's 5.5 people that would eventually be homeless if we didn't build more homes, because our population growth is such that at a certain event horizon we will not have enough homes for 5.5 million people if we continue at this pace. That makes sense. That's always confused me.
No, but what that doesn't, I always say, that doesn't take into account. We talk about that, but does that take into account the apartments that are being built?
That's what I've also wondered that as well, which kind of goes to my second thesis is like, does that mean people are being forced to rent because there are not enough available homes? And so they could afford a home, but there's nothing in their area. And so they're renting. And maybe that plays into it as well. So maybe it's kind of like number 1 and 2 that I was talking about. I don't know. Those are some of the statistics we say with a lot of conviction. And I'm just like honest enough to be like, I don't know what we're convicted about. I've never understood what the statistic means. The population growth to building makes a lot of sense. So this says National Low Income Housing Coalition identifies a specific shortage of 7.1 million rental homes for extremely low income households. This I believe with all of my heart and soul. And I think that we are not talking enough. We could probably do a whole nother show on this, that we are not talking enough about affordable housing for low income people in this country. And it's something that I will tell you guys should be important to, and not important to everyone in the sense that everybody needs to take action around it. But we should very much care about that, because the backbone of our economy is people that are at median or lower than median income. And it is getting incredibly difficult for them to find affordable places to live. And that will always societally lead to very bad things.
Yes. Now let me, Brian.
Bring it back. I didn't mean to like make it weird there. I just saw that stat.
Weird. Yeah. I don't even know where to take that.
We can just go to part 5, which is
look, this is the final part, because we do got to go to our real estate meetup.
We do.
So after you've listened to this and the show has been released, next week we will have our second Realtor meetup. And all you got to do if you want to go to this, I believe we have over 100 RSVP'd for this one. We had over 100 last time. We had 50 plus people show up to the first one, and it's a great time.
It was fun,
right? A lot of look, it's all, there's no selling. There's no agenda. This is a meetup. This is getting face to face, belly to belly with agents, lenders, the vendors, and talking shop. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to be doing in a world of technology and AI. We hide behind our screens and we get into this, our own little kind of think tank, and we're not the best. We shouldn't be the only one in that think tank.
Exactly.
And neither should your AI, because it's always gonna find ways to always agree with you.
It's gonna hallucinate
so
too.
Make sure to go to our real estate Facebook group, DFW Realtors, and let's to really understand it. 2026 it's not a rebound year; it's a redistribution year. Right? So we're not rebounding. It's just a redistribution. The good news is, look, less agents they're leaving.
It's a great way to put it.
Look, it's a bigger and better opportunity for you.
Yep.
Right? And it takes it from maybe during that expansion phase, you were more of a passive participant, meaning that everything just came to you. It was super easy. The skill set didn't have to be there. The lead generation didn't have to be there. Now you got to be a consistent participant, a consistent producer.
Yeah.
And this is where you go into more of the portfolio builder instead of being a transactional builder, right? It takes a little bit more work. It takes a little bit more relationship.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit more, elbow grease and problem solving. And then what you will do, and this is something that Brian and I really, really want to bring to the marketplace, because this is something we shared yesterday. And we've been asked to speak at a larger conference in July. you're going to go from surviving. You get to go from surviving agents to an opportunity first agent and an opportunity first framework. And being an opportunity first agent is going to allow you to work off of 8 steps to really look and analyze listing at bats and listing opportunities, and how it's going to allow you to become the wealth builder in your family, how it's going to help you build passive income, how it's going to help you protect your future in your retirement. So just be on the lookout for that, Brian.
I'm going to pull Audible and make an executive decision. I really think that next episode we should talk more about the opportunity framework. The opportunity first.
We'll take it up the food chain.
We'll run it up.
We'll see what
corporate.
Jesse says.
We'll run it up the ladder. But yeah, I mean, bottom line is the agents that are building a bigger tool belt are succeeding right now. Agents that are plugging into their business and doing the work are succeeding right now. And again, I know this is anecdotal, but agents that are doing the work every day and are producing agents, they're starting to have really good years again. We're seeing it. And that means that market share is becoming available for everyone. It's just whether or not you're willing to plug into your business every day. Absolutely.
What a show.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Feel good about it.
If you can, go and go like this on YouTube. Go subscribe to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and comment on the Facebook group. This is where it gets dropped and posted. And then, of course, go support those sponsors, please. Homeward Property Management, the best property management company in Dallas-Fort Worth. Duncan and Dana, the double Ds, they crush it. Duncan and Dana. Just go to homewarddfw.com, and then all your remodeling, your handyman work, your HVAC, your roofing, your electrical, your plumbing, whatever you need. When you think of fixing, repairing, remodeling, and rehabbing, think of Chris over at ProCare Home Solutions, procaredfw.com. And then get with Jesse. Jesse will hook you up in the studio. It looks amazing. It's phenomenal in here. Yeah. Any other Donald Trump word, some of those big buzzwords, huge. Just go to tourstudios.com and tell them that the people from the DFW podcast sent you over there.
Episode 4 in the books. We really appreciate everybody listening, and we'll see you next week.
Brian, don't forget to eat.
DFW, turn it up.